Hi there, I'm Adam Durant from the Niagara Workforce Planning Board. In this series of videos, we're going to be exploring a deceptively simple question. What happened in 2020? COVID-19 has had and continues to have a serious impact on our local workforce. It has created new challenges for employers and job seekers while also accelerating some issues that were already in place. Our goal with this series of videos is to help peel back the layers on the data so that everybody can understand the story of how Niagara's labor force has coped with COVID-19. In this talk, we're going to gain a better understanding of what happened with Niagara's specific employment sectors during 2020. Let's begin by getting on the same page when we talk about a sector. It's one of those words that can get thrown around and can mean different things to different people. For these data, we're going to use the North American industrial classification of a sector. That means we have two sectors to worry about, at least for right now: goods producing and services producing. The goods producing sector is home to every employer whose business focuses on making things: food, clothes, car parts, flat packed furniture. If someone is taking something and turning it into something else, it is in the goods producing sector. And despite what you may have heard, Niagara's goods producing sector is an essential part of our local economy. And in terms of employment, it actually did fairly well during 2020. We started the year with about 46,500 people employed in our goods producing sector. The spring lockdown months do report about a 22% decline in employment by the time we get to May. But that decline quickly changed course over the summer, and by December of 2020, there were about 400 more people working in the goods producing sector than there were in January. The services producing sector comprises everything in the economy that's not producing goods. This sector moves products, sells products, and houses all of the services that a society has to offer, from accountants to zoologists. This sector felt the greatest impacts from COVID-19. Much of the work done in the services producing sector is built around person-to-person interactions, and that is the very thing that we attempted to limit once the pandemic was declared. While it's common to see some employment slowdowns in the services producing sector in January and February, 2020 saw Niagara lose about 16% of its services producing employment. That's almost 26,000 people who were working in January of 2020 that weren't working in May of 2020. The summer and fall months also had a gradual increase in employment, but the peak of those gains happened in October. In any other year, we would expect to see those gains peak in December because that's where all of our seasonal hiring happens. So 2020 ended with about 10,000 fewer Niagara residents working compared to January of 2020. When we account for fluctuations in the data and month-over-month volatility, we get a snapshot of local employment patterns that shows where Niagara's residents gained employment and where they lost employment. Overall, we see that between 2019 and 2020 saw about 13,700 fewer employed Niagara residents. And while we had employment gains in manufacturing, education, and business and building support services, we had considerable employment losses in wholesale and retail trade, information, culture and recreation, and accommodation and food services. Those losses are particularly challenging when we consider that those last three sectors support our local tourism economy as well as create employment opportunities for young people. These sectors tell us where a person works, but they don't tell us what a person does. To get a better understanding of that, we need to look at occupational data. These data give us an overview of how many more or fewer people were working in Niagara within the 10 major occupation groups, and it likely comes as no surprise to see that our largest year-over-year employment losses were in sales and service occupations. Remember from that last slide, accommodation and food services employed 5,800 fewer people in 2020, and the wholesale and retail trade industry employed 5,200 fewer people. People working in sales and service occupations are going to be working in both of those industry sectors, as well as in other industry sectors within the regional economy. Just as there are employment gains through the industry lens, we can also see the occupation groups that posted employment gains in 2020. In some ways, it's not surprising at all to see business and finance occupations posting the most gains. These are jobs that often require the least amount of face-to-face interaction and can offer the most capacity for remote work or a hybrid work arrangement. Now that we have a sense of the change, let's finish by taking stock of where 2020 left us. When we look at the entirety of the employment landscape in Niagara, we see that three groups make up the most employment activity in the region: sales and service occupations, business, finance, and administration occupations, and trades, transport, and equipment operators. So even with those employment losses in sales and service occupations and trades and transport occupations that we saw on the previous slide, these two employment groups remained an essential part of the local employment mix. We can also see that the 2,500 fewer jobs in arts, culture, and entertainment in 2020 means that an already small employment group got even smaller. 10,800 fewer jobs in sales and service is a 16% decline in that occupation group. In comparison, 2,500 fewer jobs in arts and culture is a 38% decline for that occupation group. So the important takeaway here is that employment changes affect different sectors in different ways. Something that can be seen as a limited employment change in one sector will have much bigger consequences for another. So let's sum up. These data have shown us that by and large 2020 was a year of employment losses across multiple industry sectors and occupation groups. The sectors and occupation groups that were hardest hit were generally, but not always, those that require a close level of physical contact or those that have fallen under shutdowns to stop the spread of COVID-19. Sectors where we've seen growth, such as manufacturing, and occupations that have seen growth, namely business and administration, reflect the types of work that can either be done safely while maintaining physical distance or easily allow for hybrid and work-from-home models. Thank you for watching this video. For more information and the latest labor market numbers, please go to nwpb.ca and explore our data and community resources.